Welcome to the Enerpac RP-120BP and RPG-120 Rail Puller Operational Overview. The models shown are self-contained and powered by onboard power takeoff or PTO hydraulics. They have a 120-ton capacity and can be used on rails up to 141 pounds. They are designed to be safe and easy to use. Let's start by getting familiar with the RP-120BP Puller's components. Lifting beam, beam lifting shackle, beam lifting handle, beam lock pin, bracket, swing arm, rail grip, rail locator, pull indicator label, and pull cylinder. The control panel features an instructional label, PTO pressure line connector, PTO tank line connector, tonnage gauge, valve lock pins, beam control valve, pull control valve, lockdown valve, and the speed control valve. The speed control valve regulates the beam or puller's rate of movement. It is good practice to ensure that the speed control valve is turned fully counterclockwise to its slowest setting before extending or retracting the beam or the puller. The components on the RPG-120 puller are the beam, lifting hook, beam lock pin, bracket, rail grip, rail locator, pull cylinder, swing arm, and safety spring with latch bar. The control panel features an instructional label, PTO pressure line connector, PTO tank line connector, tonnage gauge, valve lock pin, control valve, and lockdown valve. Terminology. For valves with handles controlling lateral movement of the cylinders or beam, the neutral, hold, or stop position will be referred to as the center position. The extend, advance, or open position will be referred to as the right position. The pull, retract, or close position will be referred to as the left position. This video is provided as a training aid for the safe and proper use of the equipment shown. The following safety notes are not all-inclusive, but provide general considerations to be observed when operating Enerpac rail pullers. Read and fully understand the instruction manual and any updates for more complete safety and operating instructions. Always consult Enerpac's website at www.enerpac.com for the latest instruction manuals and safety updates. Always wear safety goggles and protective clothing during operation of this system. Never exceed the rated 2000 psi input pressure. Always inspect all system parts for wear, distortion, cracks, or improper fit before each use. Remedy any situation before proceeding. It is extremely important to inspect and clean the rail grips before each use. Use a wire brush or file card to remove any metal filings or debris from each grip. Grips that show wear or damaged teeth must be replaced prior to use. Failure to maintain and replace worn grips can cause either the puller to slip on or release the rail. Never use a puller that is leaking oil. Replace the leaking component before use. Personnel should stand clear of the direction of force, either directly in front of or behind the pullers during the pull. Always monitor the pulling force and system pressure during the pull by monitoring the tonnage gauge. Reapply dust caps to quick couplers when not in use. Warning: never disassemble any hydraulic connections on the rail puller that are under pressure or to release trapped pressure. To relieve pressure, open the lock valve and shift the control lever back and forth with the PTO off. If pressure remains, open the safety pressure release valve located on the control manifold. Use a rag or some type of adequate protection to help shield from the potential harm of escaping fluid. To begin using the RP-120BP, the first step is to position the puller on the rail. Use the lifting shackle to hoist the puller from the truck and lower it directly onto the railhead. Care should be taken to prevent injury to persons or damage to the puller. Use the red locator arrow on the beam as a guide to center the puller over the rail gap. The next step is to connect PTO lines. Remove the dust caps and ensure the couplers are free of dirt and debris to prevent system contamination. Connect the PTO tank line to the coupler and turn the collar to secure. Note that turning the collars to the detent will prevent accidental disconnection while in use. Connect the pressure line to the coupler and turn its collar to secure. If connecting the PTO couplers to the puller is difficult, there could be pressure trapped in the puller due to the thermal expansion of the oil. To remedy, follow the same procedure for releasing trapped pressure as described earlier by operating the control valves and/or opening the safety pressure release valve. Use a rag or some type of adequate protection to help shield from the potential harm of escaping fluid. We are now ready to clear the beam and set up the pull. Close the load lock valve by turning clockwise until it mechanically stops. Turn on the PTO. Remove the lock pins from the pull and beam control valve handles. Shift the beam control valve to the right position to extend the beam and clamp the rail. Use the speed control valve to regulate the beam's advance rate. When the rail is clamped, shift the beam control valve to the center position. Remove the beam lock pin from the far end of the puller. Shift the beam control valve to the left to retract the beam. Continue until the beam is fully retracted. Lift the beam to the upright position and insert the beam lock pin to secure. To make the pull, shift the pull control valve to the left position. Use the speed control valve to regulate the rate of the pull. Be sure to monitor the tonnage gauge for pull force. As soon as the gap has been closed to the desired width, shift the control valve back to the center position. Turn off the PTO. For the RPG-120 model, close the load lock valve by turning clockwise until it mechanically stops. Turn on the PTO. Shift the control valve to the left position to clamp and pull the rail until the tonnage gauge moves. Shift the control valve to the center position and engage the 4 mechanical lockdowns. Shift the control valve to the left position to close the gap to the desired width. Then, shift back to the center position. Turn off the PTO. Remove the beam cotter pins and lock pins and hoist the beam from the puller. Loosening the detent knob will aid in the beam's removal and later replacement. Once the beam on either model is cleared, the Enerpac pullers have ample clearance for all standard thermite welding equipment, hydraulic rail shears, and grinders. Once the weld is complete, the puller can be removed. For the RP-120BP, with the PTO off, shift the pull control valve to the right position. Open the load lock valve by turning the knob counterclockwise. The pressure reading on the tonnage gauge should reach 0 before proceeding. Shift the pull control valve back to the center position. The next step is to swing the beam down. Remove the beam lock pin and lower the beam back onto the rail. Restart the PTO. Shift the beam control valve to the right position. Use the speed control valve to regulate its rate of movement. Extend the beam until it is reattached to the clamp and reinstall the lock pin at the end of the beam. Shift the pull control valve to the right to fully extend the pulling cylinders. Return the pull control valve to the center position. Shift the beam control valve to the left to retract the beam and fully open the puller. Use the speed control valve to regulate the rate of movement. Continue until the beam is fully retracted. Shift the beam control valve to the center position when finished. The puller is now ready to be removed from the rail. With the PTO off, shift the beam control valve handle back and forth to release any trapped pressure. Shift both the beam and pull control valves back to center position and replace the handle lock pins. Disconnect the hydraulic lines for the PTO at the quick disconnect couplers. Remove the puller by hoisting at the lifting shackle. For the RPG-120, with the PTO off, hoist the beam back onto the puller and reinstall the lock pins and their cotter pins. Turn the detent knob counterclockwise. Disengage the 4 mechanical lockdowns from the safety springs. Shift the control valve to the right. Open the load lock valve by turning the knob counterclockwise. The pressure reading on the tonnage gauge should reach 0 before proceeding. Shift the control valve to the center position. Restart the PTO and shift the control valve to the right until the cylinders are fully extended. The clamp should be at a distance that spans the length of the beam and fully engages the ball detent. Shift the control valve back to the center position. The puller is now ready to be removed from the rail. With the PTO off, shift the control valve back and forth to release any trapped pressure. Shift the control valve to the center position and replace the lock pin. Disconnect the pressure line and then the tank line for the PTO at the quick disconnect couplers. Remove the puller by hoisting at the lifting point. The Enerpac RP-120BP and the RPG-120 rail pullers require simple procedures for general maintenance. This helps provide trouble-free operation and extended service life. Keep the pivot points of the swing arms lubricated and free of contaminants to minimize wear. Keep the rail grips clean and free of any debris or lubrication and replace when worn. Always keep the couplers clean and free of dirt and debris, and use the dust caps provided with the quick couplers when not in use. This concludes the operational overview of the Enerpac rail pullers. Enerpac. Powerful solutions, global force.